Of 5 days in Turkana, where we immerse ourselves in nature, in the history of the place. We talk to scientists in the field, local scientists at the Turkana Basin Institute, which is now the third partner in this endeavor. And so this is the very first nature poetry writing retreat that we have ever organized. And it basically means that we invited 2 Kenyan and 2 Scottish poets to this excursion / writing reflection session at the Turkana Basin Institute, the Turkwa campus in Turkana. And what we wanted to achieve was to support and to encourage the poets in their writing, and particularly in their engagement with the non-human world. And so the idea was to support them in transforming nature, any aspect of nature, from a mere backdrop to a living, breathing protagonist of their poetry, or of their stories, and in their case, the poetry. And when I wrote this speech, I wanted to be as easy as possible, and then I was told to really be easy, and now it turns out to be a bit stiff, but I hope you bear with me. This is living room setup. We wanted to make it really an experience sharing. This is not a lecture, or we will not have a Q&A. We will have a conversation among the poets and with you. Yeah, so this is an event which is typical for Macondo, that is for you. And we want to ask you for your questions, your opinions, your own experiences, whatever it is that you want to share, and particularly share with the poets. We have our partner from the Scottish Poetry Library who would also say a few words. And then I don't know whether TBI wants to. No, TBI does not want to. But TBI is very much acknowledged. But then I will hand over to Ngwatilo, who does not need any introduction. And then she will start the conversation, but first of all, of course, has a way of making you known who the poets are. Okay, Sam?
Thanks, Anya. Just a couple of words from me. I'm project coordinator at the Scottish Poetry Library in Edinburgh. So when you're next walking down the Royal Mile in Edinburgh, you're very welcome to pop in and see us. When the invitation came from Macondo that we could come to the Turkana Basin Institute, we just needed to bring 2 Scottish poets, and that was all we needed to bring. It was a fantastic opportunity, a kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, although we hope that it's going to be more than once in a lifetime. It was incredibly hot, it was incredibly intense, but also incredibly inspirational. The cradle of humanity, which we can all share. So I hope you enjoy some of the work that came out of that. And we obviously didn't scare off the field students who were there at the same time, because they've come along tonight as well. So they got to see a dry run of some of the poems, and they can validate that there's some quality stuff here. So all that remains for me to say is to say thank you so much to Cheche for hosting, and thank you so much to all the generosity of the Kenyan poets and the Kenyan team, and all the partnerships. We couldn't have asked for a warmer welcome in all senses of the word. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Angwenyi.
Hi, habari yenu. Habari yenu. Okay, mambo. I love it. Okay. My name is Ngwatilo. I'm so sorry. I will try and lean into the person who's not seeing me and lean out again. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being with us. It is amazing to be on the other side of it. It's kind of sad. Do you feel kind of sad? Just we've been like sleeping outside, but like in the most elite way. Like we've been having big skies. Like, like we came back and we were riding in a cab together and we're like, oh, buildings. Oh, skyscrapers. Oh no. But it's been an incredible week kind of thinking and being in the middle of nature by the Turkwell. It's not every day. I think even as Kenyans, it's not every day that we get to be by Lake Turkana on the Turkwell River. I think some of us, we just read it in 844 on a map somewhere and we saw and we're like, okay, got it. We were there. Yeah. And not only that, we've been having conversations about deep and shallow time. And I say this all as a way just to introduce the work that we've been doing and just give you a sense of the absolute privilege it's been to do that. But I will not say all the words because I am only the poet practitioner. We have the poets. Yes? Are you ready for some poetry? No. No, we're not gonna do that, guys. We are not gonna be like that. When I say, are you ready for some poetry? The answer is one. The answer is, you can add must go also if you want. I did that for Ngartia, but also for myself. The ideas reflected in this session do not reflect the thoughts and opinions of Cheche Bookshop, Turkana Basin Institute, Macondo Literary Festival, or any of the affiliates. Thank you so much. I want to introduce our first poet. Her name is Eloise. Birtwhistle. Okay, so I practiced this. I'm so sorry, guys. Now you know the inner side of my mind because I was like, I would write. I'd think in my head, and then I'd have to go back and be like, no, you were wrong. You were wrong. So it's Birtwhistle. Yeah, her name is Eloise Birtwhistle. She's an awesome poet. Okay, and she's got some poems for you.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, taller. Is that okay? Can everybody hear me all right? I'm going to read two poems. So the first poem I'm going to read is the one that's on the postcards that have been made up. I don't know if people know about those yet, but some postcards have been made up for you to take away. And that one is a Scottish poem that I think speaks to a lot of the sort of themes and things we've been thinking about this past week. That poem is quite an old poem, very old actually. And then I'm going to read a poem that I finished about an hour ago, or finished, brackets, question mark, about an hour ago. So that is a very, very new poem. And that one is about the last week that we just had. The first one, the Scottish one, is about a tradition called walking, W-A-U-L-K-I-N-G. So not this. And walking is when women are beating wool in order to make it into tweed and soften it to make it into tweed. And I wrote this poem after someone I know who's from Barra, which is one of the Hebridean islands, so the northwest coast of Scotland, was going back to Barra to record walking songs, which are the songs that the women sing as they thump on the wool, and it keeps their rhythm. And what my friend was doing was recording these songs, but she left years in between. So she was recording the songs, but she was also recording the loss of the songs, because this is kind of an old tradition that is getting lost. That's not really in the poem, but I thought it was interesting, bit of context. Walking. Shorn from a pink and pregnant stomach, the fleece is still warm to touch, still doused in the ewe, her salts and oils. Women fill buckets, heat the rain, and slowly unstitch grease away, cleansing the wool of its old body. Dye sidles along fibres, bruising outward until everything's mauve. This coat is draped onto heather, echoing the land where it dries. Scraped apart by muscles and wire to be undone and redone into webs of yarn, to be thrown and pressed by the loom. They ask the cloth how many songs it will take, which verses to use. A jug of milk is poured as a sweet, thick offering. The women's hands, their hard feet, their piss and songs and rhythm and gossip, over and over, thumping it soft. And the second poem is the extremely fresh poem, so some kindness in the... Oh, shit. Thank you. Yeah, very, very fresh. But it's called 7 Tools for Filling Gaps in Turkana. And this poem, it's 7 stanzas, and each stanza 7 lines long. 7 tools for filling gaps in Turkana. 1. Emakwi. Meet a boy with a mind sharp as a thorn bush, named after a beloved desert shrub. Ask him to guide your roots and to use his many tongues. Let him tell you what his people need. 2. Nesting. On Central Island, you will take a piss between a flowering bush and a long idle shack. Your urine will be thirsty and hot as the land. A crevice in the shack's wood will vibrate with the wiggling bottom of a huge black bee. 3. Decoupage excavation. And for the people who aren't archaeology students in the room, this is a archaeological technique that we were told about, which is described to us by Professor Lisa as aggressive brushing of the ground. 3. Decoupage excavation. Begin your brushing here, where answers may be buried. Don't be afraid. It is possible to be both delicate and bold. Your fingertips sweat until the wind rolls in to bless them. Wind swirls the sand, uncovers bones. 4. Route planning. With only a scatter of shared language, bring your hands to your torso and gesture right, then left. Pause for an inward path to be drawn. Describe the land, lock knuckles as rock, or channel a trunk that grows into a canopy of fingers. 5. Rift Valley. Land rises beyond its skin, opening innards to the sky. Rain falls and rivers pour in. A great dam erupts, pooling the flow. Algae bring sugar and air to the lake and turn the water the dust green colour of millet flour. 6. Tourism. Throw everything up. Mango juice from the plain, your anti-malarial, the crumbs of a half-digested biscuit. Be rewarded with the car's front seat and the driver's subtle woody scent. Ask all the questions that have been asked before. 7. Poetry. This is the one I've not written yet, so stay tuned.
I just want to say thank you for sharing work in progress with us. It's a thing you have to practice, right? To be brave with people that you don't know. So, Eloise the brave. Yeah, give her a hand. Give her a hand. I just want you to know, all the poets are very brave and very kind. Get it? This is an inside joke from Turkana people. Well, it's a joke now. I love the work that you shared. Thank you, and also for bringing Tweed into the room with us, and the idea that women who are doing work are not only here. I think we are used to people doing work here only. We're used to labor poems here about us. So I appreciate the labor of women in Scotland, keeping up a very old tradition also. I feel like we'll talk more. I want to switch come back to Kenya. We've been in Scotland, and now we're coming back. We've been in Scotland and Turkana, and now we're going to Nairobi and Turkana possibly with Michelle Angwenyi. We are like, yeah. Should I say very many things about? I feel like we're not going to say. Just know they're all very highly accomplished poets who do not require big bios because they are big and will be here forever, and we don't want to intimidate each other or you, right? Michelle Angwenyi, take the stage. Do you want this?
Let's see what works better. Okay. Closer to my head. Hello? Does this work? Yes. Okay. Thank you all so much for being here. It means a lot to see a lot of familiar faces, but also a lot of unfamiliar faces. And it's always so nice to see people be curious about poetry or interested or violently deeply interested, which is what some of us are. But for whatever reason you're here, I'm really grateful for that. And when I was thinking about what to read today, I was looking through my archives, and I think this is just a few lines of a poem I wrote on gratitude, and I think I just want to extend that to everybody who's here. It doesn't have a title. I make up where we are, fill it with a certain light, a certain kind of music, with a future that very briefly opens its eyes into this moment. The second one is a love poem, as poems tend to be. And for those of you who know me and know how very deeply obsessed I am with birds, the title is Bird, and I don't know why, because the rest of the poem doesn't really allude to that, but I guess it's just a confluence of my interests, and yeah, it's a love poem though, but the title is Bird, for whatever reason. Here we go. There's only you, it doesn't matter where. In that, a largeness similar to the one you are around me, a largeness of the way you make me feel, the realness in being visible to you, the realization of the startlingly benign matter of beauty, even when the small unending grace of your face is radiating through my life, and your eyes, grace further unending, I am the one who gets to be seen by you. Thank you.
I am the one who gets to be seen by you. Hey, stop yourself. Hey. A moment of silence for love, eh? I have so many questions, but I'll hold myself. We'll see which ones are public questions and which ones are to be privately held in a corner. Thank you for these, for the sense of gratitude, for the sense of love. Also, I think in this, maybe one of the challenges and one of the things I would love to speak with you all later about is that we've been, the whole point of this, not point, but like the call was, disrupting the nature narrative, right? And thank you for bringing love into the room, because it's the thing that kind of keeps a lot of us going. Before flowers, and even the thing about flowers is love, right? Before we know too much about history, we want to be accepted, we want to be known. To be seen. Thank you. I feel like I've had a solo conversation there, but we'll come back. Okay. I want to invite Jen. We seem to be doing like going from the outer to the inner. I don't think there was an order or a meaning, but here we are coming to the middle. I want to introduce Jen Carver. Do you go by Genevieve when you're being introduced on stage? Genevieve, guys, to you. To me, Jen, all right? So Genevieve Carver, take the stage.
Thank you. I really regret sitting in the middle, actually, because I'm now sat awkwardly at the back of like every single shot of everybody reading. Anyway, I'm going to read a couple of poems that have come out of this week. So they're both pretty fresh. I think they're also probably both works in progress. And I guess this first one, I've been thinking a lot about scientific process. So we took a field trip with some of the students who are here and with Professor Lisa to a site called Lothegum, which these days is quite a harsh environment, very desert, very strong winds, very, very hot. But in the past, it was Lake Turkana stretched all the way there. There was water, there were rivers, and she talked to us about trying to reimagine that ancient landscape and all the changes that it's gone through over time. And this poem came out of that field trip, and yeah, I was kind of thinking about this idea of disrupting the narrative that we've been saying all week. And so this poem is in two voices, one of which is like the voice of the academic article, the voice of the scientific process, and the second voice is, I guess, the present that was so visceral and so kind of tactile, and you couldn't ignore it. Like, you know, it was such an onslaught to the body to be in that space. So yeah, this poem, and because it's in two voices, I'm going to invite the wonderful Ngartia to come and join me to read one of the voices.
Hey.
We'll just have to do it like this. So this is called Abstract.
This paper will.
Jeep jolts on dust track.
This paper will examine.
Barbet babble, go away bray.
Will examine.
Time-lapse sunrise.
We'll examine the paleo environment.
Indigo spine in sandal sole.
The paleo environment of the
Proto-speech in breath of wind.
of the desert where you stand.
Where you birthed and died in a blip of rifting.
The desert where you stand was once a lakeshore.
Stranded melanoides.
Was once a forest.
Fossilized leaf fall.
Grassland.
Butterfly carnival.
Watering hole.
How many throats rekindled by your kiss?
This paper will consider.
How many claw prints in the silk?
This paper.
This cleaving of continents in your chest. This delta in your pelvis.
This.
Eruption on your tongue. Thank you, Ngartia! And the second poem I'm going to read, I spent a lot of my time in Turkana looking at birds and trying to figure out what they were called. And it got me thinking about, again, I like to think about scientific process and the way as humans we understand things. And I think I have, in some ways, quite a kind of, in some ways, quite a logical brain where I sort of want to classify things and name them and like understand them. And I was kind of thinking about what that means and how there are also many other different ways of understanding the world around you. And yeah, I don't know, I wanted to think about what it is to name something. I use the names I got from my field guide about Turkana birds, and I also got really interested in that field guide. The descriptions of the sounds that birds make. You're supposed to be able to understand, for example, what a ring-necked dove sounds like because it says, work harder, work harder. I didn't hear any birds saying that to me, but apparently that's what they say. And I was already working like as hard as I could. And then I also got we had a meeting with Chief Sarah of the Turkana people, and from her I learned some of the local names of some of the birds. So yeah, I guess that's the basis of this, which is called Bird List. Common bulbul, hadada ibis, crested lark, a rustling in the Salvadora shrub, a wing beat, a negotiation with air. Hempricks hornbill, Egyptian goose, sacred ibis, flutter of discovery, observed through a lens. What currency does your virtue carry here? Purple roller, lesser masked weaver, speckled pigeon, indigo flash, feathered eye floater, dappled artistry. Black-winged stilt, gull-billed tern, yellow-billed stork. Latinate labels, uncertain ID is to name a type of hunting. Pied crow, cattle egret, grey heron, ekorok, pellebong, question mark. Eastern violet-backed sunbird, eastern olivaceous warber, question mark. Some type of gull, question mark, is to name, to colonize. Lacking language, I close my lips and listen. Red and yellow barbet, unknown, ringed plover. Technobabble, frog-like rasping, softened siren. Reed cormorant, little egret, ring-necked dove. Lacking language, I let the field guide speak for you. Work harder, work harder. Green shank, green wood hoopoe, white-bellied go-away bird. Mellow choo-choo-choo, cackling chatter that sounds maniacal, a series of grumpy yelps. Great white egret, red-eyed dove, spur-winged plover. Is to fly, a form of uprising. I am a red-eyed dove. Sick, sick, sick. Thank you.
Work harder!
There's a whole performance piece in there, like as the sound of birds. And it could be abusive, so I will refrain. I hope you're thinking about, like this is as much, you know, a kind of a close for us as it is an invitation to you to kind of think with us and be part of our process. And also, you know, ask us challenging questions. What do you feel like are challenging questions? This is an open space, right? Yeah? Yeah? Ask you guys challenging questions. But like really think with us, what is this thing that is disrupting the nature narrative? What does the poetry look like? You guys have to think about that because I'm about to ask y'all that question. And before that, we'd like to hear something of what Ngartia has been thinking. Ngartia, who has no last name. Ngartia, welcome to the stage.
Thank you. As introduced, I am Ngartia, who has no last name. Hi. Guy. Goza. That's more like it. That's more like it. I like it. I'll go straight into the poetry. Thank you for being here. That's not the poem. We've spent like a really solitary week. I think Turkana needs to be on everyone's bucket list, like top 3. I don't care what's there, like whatever else you have there, like Mars, Amsterdam red light district, Turkana. So the first poem is related to something I read for the students. It's so lovely to have you guys here, the field students we found in Turkana. I fear I might have traumatized them, and I think it's only fair that we extend that to the room. But it's also because both you and our Scottish friends are here at a very specific point in history, and you might have to explain what was going on around you as you're doing your poetry and your archaeology. So here is, how will a stay safe text help? How will a stay safe text help if none of us are safe? How will a live pin help if I won't leave if they pin me down? Body dropped in my location. How will seeing me off help? How will a phone call telling you I'm home? They pick us up outside in the neighborhood. Network provider assisted. Mobile murders. Tariff ni sambaza kifo. They're breaking our doors down, friend. I'm sorry, but How will a stay safe text help? There's no clever wordplay for this. Nothing clever, no words. Children can't play. Playful plays exit. Everything has to voice this. Robbed of our bliss, marked of our whimsy. I know, it's for you, right? So your heart can rest, so you can find sleep, manage uncertainty. This is care, community. So stay safe and tell me when you get home. Yeah, so that's what's happening. It's a bit heavy, so we'll lighten it a bit with the drafts. We've switched to the notebook, so just some stuff that we've picked up in Turkana that may or may not be full poems yet. The first one comes from two encounters. So we got some really, really, really good tours, especially not just the field tour was amazing, but we also got really good tours of like the labs and where fossils are stored and the stories around them. There are like 27 fossils from, I think, one of the earliest massacres that can be traced in human history. And then after that, went to the banks of the Turkana, which like it really looks sacred. And I took a selfie and I felt really stupid. It's like, this is what we've evolved to. So this is that stupidity on the paper. Oh, also, yeah, and the other encounter is, at some point we asked how the Turkana community feels about all the work that's being done there, the digging and all that. And Chief Sarah kind of dropped the diplomacy and she was like, Nibati amjaienda kwa graves za babu yetu. And then she was like, yeah, but otherwise the community is, benefiting from the community. So it felt like there's a lot of taking from Turkana. So take time, take a moment, take space, take a walk, take a phone out, take a picture. Kenya Pithecus selfie-ansis. Thank you. And the last one, because they put me at the end of this lineup. This came in Turkana, and then after that, we were like, no more poems until we went to Nairobi. I'm reading The Wind. Turkana drifts on, meanders and sandbanks, whispering acacias, green across the lager, green across the valley. I'm listening, reading the wind. The Japanese studied wind, kamikaze thoughts, typhoons. These winds know these lands, and these lands know my ancestry. I look over Eden? ? Remembering, reconnecting, reading the wind. A goat bleats across the river. Grass rustles. The veil drops. I pour a libation. Thy, yagai, thy. My Gikuyu ancestors, these Turkana ancestors, human ancestors, thy, generation piled upon generation. Thy. I feel my roots. I feel our shared stem. I read the wind. We have branched and lived and bloomed. The quest bore fruit, seeds scattered across the globe. We came back home, back to the cradle to dig, to seek, to sift through rock, through soil, through hell, feeling around in the dark, buried in questions. Who are we? Why are we? How are we? Where are we? What are we? We return, feeling around for mother, maybe swaddling clothes, lost uncle, Aunt Lucy. Footsteps of our fathers, dig, think, read the wind. We come home, having seen it all, having made it all, known it all, taught it all, thought it all. Enter our nursery only to find fragments of evidence, shards of memory. We lost us, in search of us. So here I am with a water bottle, a notebook, and sunscreen in 2025 in Turkana, insisting on reading the wind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Asanteni sana. Please clap for them again. Okay. And now questions. Or rather, we've had many conversations, and we did have many conversations as we were sitting in the dining mess. Yes? That's what we called it, right? I felt like I was in MASH. Yeah, oh, we saw camel spiders, look them up. It was fun. They attended our readings. How did it, I guess I'm coming to, like Jen, you spoke about like the scientific process and curiosity about that. I think Michelle, you also very heavily into that. And like now on this other side, because I think some of that we spoke about even before, like, and spending time with budding archaeologists and paleontologists. I'm looking at y'all. How does the, on this other side, how has the scientific process as you observed it impacted your writing process? And all of you can answer it, and I'm gonna share the mic.
Right. Guess since I'm at the edge of the line, I guess there's no one to pass it on to, but I really like that question. But first of all, shout out my mom. She's over there in the corner. So I think for me, the main question at the heart of what I think about when it comes to that nexus between science and poetry is the idea of fact or truth and its representation in the world. And even just going off of Jen's poem of like naming, you are referring to the same thing, but just passing through a different route to get there. And I often wonder what it means when these knowledge systems collide and what that looks like. I think another really interesting question that a lot of us were asking was around the Lothagam pillar site and what it means that the community has a different version of events from what archaeologists have determined to be the factual scientific response to that. And I'm always, on the side of poetry or on the side of science, trying to imagine what a complete picture looks like, even if the language or the languages are not necessarily the same. What does that middle space look like? How are we making room for every route to that piece of knowledge? How do we create that fullness of thought, of expression, of all of that? So for me, that's where I am. That's where I get stuck. Because having been on the scientific side and also on the poetic side, it's like, but everybody's saying the same thing. So how can we make it such that we can appreciate whatever is in that bucket? Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree with that, like, and I think this is kind of what you were saying, that we're not on different sides, like competing against each other for the truth. We're just looking at things in different ways. I think the way it's impacted me personally to work alongside scientists and researchers is the way I construct the poems themselves. Often the form of the poem, so like both of the poems I read today took like a scientific form, like an abstract for a paper or a list of classifications. And I really like playing with forms in that way and playing with language. So you're kind of leading the reader in with one type of language, and then you're kind of subverting it you're disrupting it with the with the like poetic language. But I also really like using like technical terms within poetry and like a more interweaving of the poetic and the scientific rather than like there's the science, and now here's my really florid, beautiful poem written as a sonnet that talks about it. So they're more connected for me, if that helps.
So we're really doing the... Okay. True. But everything they've said, and I'm particularly interested in the meeting point of science and community. Scientific explanations and how they either agree with how the community describes and sees themselves, or how they differ. So I'm very, very, very interested in that, and it was very... And my practice as well, which is in drama, it's very easy to spot like language differences, right? So the massacre I mentioned, it was given to us very factually, like, oh yeah, like thousands of years, these guys, they were using no, it wasn't flint, dragon glass, obsidian arrows, and oh, here's an arrow inside a guy's head. It's from thousands of years ago. Next specimen, I'm like, hang on a second. Like, we also found a pregnant woman with a fetus still intact, and her hands were tied back, and we can't really trace the tray, but anyway, the dinosaurs. Like, can we linger in the drama a bit, maybe? And so I'm very curious about how many other such things I'm not aware of. At some point yesterday, we were talking about knowledge and communication of it. And I just don't know about it because there's not enough drama in the reporting. I don't say, like, the scientists need to start writing purple. No, but we can have a collaboration somewhere in between, right? And that serves as a catchment point. Like, I had no business learning at my big age that we have dinosaurs in Kenya, in Turkana, right? Like, I knew about Tanzanians one before Kenyans. Anyway, if mathematics and 844 was in Nikosea, I think I would have ended up in science, but they did the thing. But I still have very intrigued by science, and I think it's only natural that the meeting point is like the debated. It's archaeology. Is it really a science, a social science, or a STEM science, or in between? But I love that this is where it's meeting, because then it's a confluence of my poetry, my interest in history, and very new experiences. Over to you.
Yeah, again, echoing and really agreeing with a lot of what people have said. And I think you'll probably find in a lot of these discussions, we'll be saying that because we've been discussing this stuff all week together, which has been one of the amazing, rich things that has come out of this experience. Obviously, the environment was so stimulating, but to be there with these people was made a big difference, I think. Yeah, I guess two sort of things that come to mind from the things that people have just said. One thing, Ngartia was just talking about a kind of desensitization almost, that it felt like there was to some of the things that we found maybe quite horrific. And I just kind of wanted to note that the day we found out about that massacre was also the day that a headline came in that 23 Palestinian aid workers had been found in a mass grave in Palestine. And you just think about this desensitization that still happens. And I guess what poetry hopefully can do, a little bit at least, is try and create connection and some humanity in these spaces. Just one of the ways that we can try and push back against things, of which there are many ways, but yeah, that's one thing. And then I think another thing that poetry can do that's really interesting, I agree that, you know, it's not like two sides of something where there's science on one side and there's kind of art on the other side, and what's interesting is where these things come together. And there's so much storytelling in archaeology. It's about reading the land, it's reading the wind, as we heard. But the storytelling, sometimes I got the sense that there was a frustration from the archaeologists about the things we don't know, the things that we can't know. So, for example, we were told about the recessions of Lake Turkana. So Jen spoke about this site, Lothegum Locum, where the lake had once been up, and then we can mark the recessions by the different deposits that are left, and we know the different times how high the lake was. But one of the things we can't know is if the lake recessed even further and then resurged again, because of course it kind of would have washed all of the deposits away. And that there was maybe a sense of frustration around, we'll never be able to know that. Whereas I think poetry is like, we'll never be able to know that. And it's a very different, maybe what's exciting is you get to lay out all the evidence, and instead of, you really don't have to come to a conclusion in a poem. And in fact, I think it's better if you don't. You ask your readers, you ask your audiences to take in the things you've laid out and maybe think about their own conclusions. And that's different to science, which is more, I am the scientist and this is my conclusion. Yeah.
I have a very random question. What did Turkana sound like to you? You don't have to go in a line.
I took a lot of recordings on my phone of different soundscapes, and I wanted to try and include more of those in the stuff I was writing, but I haven't really kind of got around to that yet. But one thing I learned was, like, I don't think I can always tell the difference between a bird and an insect and a frog. That's like quite a wide, never mind like which bird it is. Like, and I found myself like, I don't know if it's helpful if we explain a bit about this experience. Like, the Turkana Basin Institute is like set in the middle of the desert, and it's pretty well kitted out. Well, is it a desert? It's semi-arid. It's got plants, and it's by the river, so it's not like totally barren. There's a lot of things growing there, and but it's very dry, very hot, and the institute's really well kitted out. But you sleep kind of outside in beds with nets around them. So it's this wonderful, like, you feel like you've got the luxury of sleeping in a bed, but you're outdoors. You can feel the wind, and it's beautiful. So you wake up and you just see the sunrise. Like, the whole sky is like sunrise. So I did a lot of like waking up and just listening. And it's actually so loud in the morning because all the birds are up. Yeah, a lot of like kind of quite harsh shrieking going on. It was funny hearing the peacocks, like when you were reading. I was like, oh, they're joining in. You can hear the wind. I felt like I was like able to tune in and listen more in the way that you can't really in a city. And I think we were talking one day about senses and how like your sense of smell just like no longer exists. No one could smell anything. And I was like, why is that? Why has your sense of smell been shut off? But the sense of touch was so like visceral, like the heat, the wind. I feel like you disagree with me. Could you smell stuff? Okay. Yeah, maybe I have long COVID. Maybe I've just found that out. So yeah, sound for me was really important. Like, it was a really, really important sense. And yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
Talk about other senses too, like just what you noticed or what kind of struck your...
Do you have any of those?
I think it was just the point that we were really thinking about us. Like, it was so bodily. Like, as a form of research, the whole thing was so bodily. Like, we were out in the field, we were holding stone tools from like millions of years ago. We were in the landscape. It was like so immersive that it was a very different experience to sitting in a library with books or looking up facts on the internet. So yeah, the sounds, like the feel of the sun on your skin, like not smell for me, but like all the other senses were just felt so heightened, and that I think really informs work in a different way to other types of research.
I like that the question has gone into like the Kiswahili, kuna sikia aje Turkana, like, so it's not just sound, it's and I'll latch on the skin thing because I wore a t-shirt today. I was like, oh God, no, and I had to like switch into another one. And I think it's also the layers because you have like your regular, if you're a lotion person, a remis, whatever, and then sunscreen. Then like the day we went to Central Ireland in Lake Turkana, it was 40 degrees. I remember seeing the icon on my phone. I think it was even telling me you're overheating. then we jump into the lake, and then that's a totally different sensory experience. So yeah, so in a Turkana unasikia fiti. But also now more of the sound. I'm not a morning person at all, so I missed a lot of the show. Half of my brain was shut off. I'd be awake, so I can describe the sunrises. They're amazing. I kind of found, some called it my spot. So I found like a tree who became my friend. It's kind of like at the cliff where charcoal just like meanders right there. But in the evening, though, I really could tell the difference between the frog and so frogs, because of course the water, lots of crickets, lots of like the night doves. There's also like what I didn't hear. There's a bird that's very common here in Meru where I grew up. Also has one of those, you're supposed to figure out what it's saying from the speech written on paper. But in Kikuyu is Kwena hehoi gorarako. It's like you guys know it. It's in Nairobi. I was like, this is the first place I've ever been where I can't hear that bird. It's like, if the translation is it's really cold, where will I sleep? And there's a folktale attached to it. It's like it's the lazy bird that's always gallivanting when every other bird is building a nest, and then at night it's just bothering everyone, asking for shelter. So it's and I remember wondering if really this is the credo of mankind. Is there, I really don't know how to articulate it. Is there the way we perceive things, like how we define a beautiful sunset, for example, or how, oh yeah, of course, had a lot of wind. There was a lot of wind, like the cliff on the boat, the Kenya Fisheries motorboat, where it's all you're hearing is different versions of the wind. There's Bodas, but in Lodwar town. That was grateful for that break. And also the sound of Turkana language. I think it was the first time I was seeing it written. But then hanging out with Francis and John Ekusi, and they're speaking English and Kiswahili to us, and then speak Turkana among themselves. And it's a very there's a Nilotic musicality that even the Ma languages have, right? And I really love that. And it's like, I have no clue what you're talking about, but it sounds amazing. Ataka, if you're gossiping me, just keep going. So yeah, I think that encapsulates it. And as you can see, our thoughts are still forming, because there's a lot of, someone proposed that we should rename TBI to TMI, because there's a lot of information, bro, like barely any time to process anything else.
Does anyone want to talk about senses or? Okay. Oh yeah, that's actually what I wanted to comment on. So yeah, I smelt the sand. Like there's this very particular smell that it had, and I know it was the sand because it smelled or something of the sand, because it smelled exactly like how Kilifi smells sometimes. So I was like, this is so familiar, and I've spent some time there, and I was like, oh, it's Kilifi. So I don't know, maybe the heat releases something from, yeah. But the other thing I heard was silence, and I think it's something that I told someone about, how, oh my God, it's so quiet, like my ears are not accustomed to this, having come from Nairobi. And that was very, very pleasant, I think, so that we could hear the other things, because I feel like Nairobi probably has its own natural sounds that we just don't have that much access to because of all the construction and everything.
Yeah, just very briefly on sound. I wear hearing aids, and I'm always complaining about how rubbish they are. And they seem to work better in that space, and I think it's to do with what Michelle was just talking about, of that silence, and then less kind of background noise. And I really, really noticed that things like the crickets were really amplified in my hearing aids, and it was a really intense experience with sound, which was exciting and fun. And one moment that kind of really marked that for me was I was writing kind of in dusk, or I started in the afternoon. So I did do writing before today, just in case the fact that I have a half-finished poem suggests that I didn't actually do any writing this week. But I was writing kind of in the afternoon through dusk and into the night one day. And I barely even noticed the light changing at all, but sort of simultaneously, it must have been, as the light changed, what I really noticed was this switch from the birds, this chorus of birds that we were having, and the scratching feet on our tin roofs, and into the chirping insects. It was this fade in the same way that you kind of get a sunset, this kind of like a synesthetic thing, you know. It's like they're doing the oral, exactly the same pattern orally as the light is doing around us as well. So yeah, that's just kind of a moment with sound, I suppose.
Sorry to overlap when my colleagues are trying to be brief, but I realized I left a fragment of a thought hanging. And the question was, I was wondering, and raised this question, I'm now extending it to you. If this is the credo of mankind, then how much of what we classify as, you know, what we go to as references for our senses, you know, like a beautiful sunset, like nice breeze, the smell or lack of, like how much of it in the human species was informed by Turkana, right? Like if you spend thousands of years, millions of years in a place evolving, then you kind of use that as a standard plate for when now you're moving. You're like, okay, that's a bit too cold, let's go back, right? And so I kept wondering a lot, because now adjusting back to Nairobi is a bit difficult. It's like 40 degrees to whatever it is right now, and it might change any moment, so carry a jacket. So please help me think, and if you have answers afterwards, I'd love to hear them.
So going from these like super rich experience to putting lines on the page, like I just want to spend a few minutes there. And this is now a question for each of you. I know you've spoken about like the form of things, but like what do you include, what do you exclude? I know some of us were taking notes, some of us were, I mean, there was a lot of stuff coming in. What makes it on the page? And maybe another way of thinking about this or asking this question is, what are you writing toward, like, as you write? We also had, again, framing. We spoke a lot about different, you know, approaches to nature writing, but then we also have our concerns, right? Or the thing that is on the heart or on the brain in that particular moment. So, what are you writing towards, and also that how do you, either one or both, and how are you transitioning from input to output?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing to contextualize this, at least for me, and I'm pretty confident the others will agree, is it's been a quite overwhelming week, right? So we've been taking in everything that we've been taking in for all of us, Nigerians and Scottish poets, has been new. Oh, fuck, sorry. Kenyans, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I know, my God, yikes. Kenyans. Well, our brains have fallen out of our ears, so that's one of it. But yeah, we're just taking in new stuff constantly in our senses, and so much information. So I think the way that I approached this week was really different to how I usually approach writing, which is that I basically wrote loads and loads and loads of prose, because I wanted to process the information that was coming into my head, and get it out in some way of my head onto a page. And then after writing the prose, I then sort of thought about where the patterns were and what themes were emerging from that, and then that's where kind of poems began coming out of it. So that's the kind of process that I had this week, and I think that was quite different from what I might usually have, because there was just so much to be running through in our heads all the time. Yeah.
Can I answer by reading? Yes. Okay, so like a lot of the technical language in archaeology and all that was very new to me. So I was writing a lot of notes. And then I think I have a bit more privilege because I work with history, so I have a bit of context. And so I'm gonna do then some of the notes from the history context side, and I'm wondering how they would serve as like an extension of the history we tell about ourselves all the way back. Still no answers. This is just notes I have that I hope will become something. So first one, from bones to stones, most tangible evidence of our ancestors' behavior. Chimpanzee, adept tool users, sticks to harvest termites, leaves as sponges, stones to crack nuts. But no chimpanzee in the wild has been seen to manufacture a tool. Humans began producing sharpened tools 2.5 million years ago by hitting two stones together, a trail of technological advance and activity. Highlighting human prehistory, small flakes, lava cobble, inch-long, surprisingly sharp. Microscopic analyses show abrasions. They cut wood, cut meat, cut soft plant. Imagine the complexity of life. Gone is the meat, gone is the wood, gone is the grass. All we have are the tools. So imagine a simple riverbank campsite. A human family group butchers meat in the shade of a structure made from saplings and thatched with reeds. 2.5 million years ago, flakes, choppers, scrapers, polyhedrons, Olduvai Gorge, Old One industry. If you went through it for 4, the last 2 lines are triggers. Olduvai Gorge it's kind of like Kariandu Sindia Gilgil, which we spotted from the air, and that was wonderful. So the other notes are more on the technical words. So a Chilean industry, northern France, that's not very technical, but hey. Mental template, intentionally imposing shape, teardrop-shaped axe, required remarkable skill and patience. Systematics, postcranial, bow plan. And the last part of my answer is also, I think, in the process of just like letting, as Eloise was saying, she was writing a lot of prose, so it's like just letting what's coming out, then hoping it becomes something else later, or it's something already. So this is from my perspective as an artist, coming from an industry where there's currently a lot of conversation about crediting and attribution and naming, and then hearing how like the science side works, where it's like, yeah, you might find a really important piece, but you just work here. So the lion's share of the credit goes to the supervisor, and is interesting. So this is called Cigarette at an Archaeological Site. Long work day, blistering sun, shallow sands, deep time. Take your break. John Ekusi discovered the common ancestor of humans and apes while smoking. 200 meters away from packing colleagues, done with the day's work. Yeah.
Yeah, getting ideas down on the page did feel really overwhelming at first. We had a really short time there, and we were presented with there's so much different stuff that gets researched at Turkana. There's the history of human evolution, lots of different types of early hominids. There's the history of, the paleogeographic and paleontological of the Rift Valley, so then you're going even further back into pre-human. There's the local community side that's happening. There were just so many different themes you could have written about. There's the natural landscape as it is now. There's just so much. And it was interesting your question, Watilo, about writing towards. I really tried not to do that. I tried to write from. So a bit like you were demonstrating with your notes there, I did a lot of mind maps. I wrote words that stuck out. The way I work is I'm really interested in sound and musicality of language, and that's often how I work, is to find words that I like the sound of and put them down on a page, and just kind of like enjoy the richness of the language and how I can evoke themes and landscapes with that. So I did lots of like mind maps of words I like, of themes that I want to explore, and then I basically just had to tell myself, like, start with one of these and try to write from it, and see what comes of it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, as they've all said, it was quite overwhelming. So what I did was latch onto one specific word, and that was accession, which is the process of making a record of the things you found and adding them to the general record. So I think having that to build the rest of my work around was quite helpful. And I think that's generally how I work, by beginning with these fragments of sentences or phrases and then kind of building around that.
Can I also just add, it was also a big help to have like a deadline of like one day to write some stuff, because I don't think I ever would have started on breaking down that overwhelming amount of information if somebody hadn't been like, you have to do it today.
That was Ngwatilo, so applause.
Very kindly and very bravely. We have one more poem. Yes? Yes, we do. And then I'm going to allow for maybe one or two questions, because the time has done the thing that the time does. But I'd love to invite you to do the thing. Tell me what you need. Introducing one last time, Michelle Angwenyi, Genevieve Carver, Ngartia, and Eloise. Birtwhistle.
I'll explain it while they set up. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the others are just going to set it up while I quickly explain what's going on. So we all were really keen to do some collaborative writing. I would argue that everything that's been written by all of us has actually been deeply collaborative already, because it's been so informed by each other. We've been spending so much time together discussing all of our responses and thoughts, and not just, the four of us, but Ngwatilo and Shabangi and Devika and Sam and Anya, and the staff at TBI. So yeah, it's all kind of collaborative thinking. But we also wanted to do some collaborative writing. So what we did is we sat down yesterday, and what we first did was we looked through the things that we've been writing in the week, and we each wrote down the themes that had come out of our writing. Then we shared those themes with each other, and we saw where the biggest intersections were of the themes. So what were the themes that we had all written about? And there were 4 themes that all of us have been writing quite a lot about. And the themes were landscape/geology/deep time, knowledge/facts/truth, colonialism, and what was the last one? Communication/language. So we had these themes, and then we went back to our writing, and we each picked lines from our writing or sentences from our writing that fitted those themes, and then we shuffled all these bits of paper around on the table and turned that into a poem that was a kind of collaboration of everybody's work. And what it is now is a kind of living, changing poem. So it just exists in these little strips of paper, and it can be shuffled and reshuffled as many times as you want and create as many poems as you want out of it. So we're just going to read this poem. We've not practiced in this setting, so hopefully this goes okay. We might just have to project with our voices. Or, and then we all just, yeah.
Barbershop quartet coming up.
Check. Guys at the back, can you hear us? Yay! Okay. Okay.
Hopefully they can hear online.
Okay. 2 mourning doves, couple of coos, flock, flutter, fly.
The torch rope to fiction from this heavy fact of earth.
My head feels like the night sky brimming with light.
As a dream transcribed onto the cover of nature. Flutter of discovery observed through a lens. his protocol of thought star-fed, sun-washed.
We're right inside plenty, the Milky Way, the layers of chattering insects.
Is to name a form of hunting. Always having been aware of the fact he is less interested in it. How does it feel to be riven open, rupturing of crystalline crust, tectonic boom, leaping wind, the certainty of a secret that doesn't consider itself as such. Lacking language, I let the field guide speak for you. I close my lips and listen. Unlike the strict analytical dreamer who woke up with a question of the limits of the expression of light in flight.
Take a picture. Canapithical selfiensis.
Your urine will be thirsty and hot as the land.
Consider the stratigraphy of the rock face, how the narratives arrange themselves in layers as if to be understood.
Meanders, sandbanks, whispering.
Land rises beyond its skin, opening innards to the sky.
They must have been shocked. Wide-eyed, gaping mouth. A white man suddenly discovering you, naming yours.
Is to fly a form of uprising?
Who are the preachers, I ask, lifting my fingers to my mouth and moving them in a sweep from my lips.
Whirlwind of learning, springing, spinning, I collapse upon all I should already know, spent.
Meet a boy with a mind sharp as a thorn bush, ask him to use his many tongues.
Take your break. John Ekusi discovered the common ancestor of humans and apes while smoking.
Irretrievable signals of color are lost to the back of a drawer.
Mata, how have you been from my heart of hearts? Mata awi.
Geography without its restless lines. Only the dust dictates which way we turn.
The water washes away its own traces.
Robust, zygomatic, sagittal-crested papa. Southern African long-snouted mama.
Proto-speech in breath of wind.
Do we have a moment for a question? Yeah. So, what have you thought? What have you seen? What do you think? Are you happy? Let me see the ones I've not been seeing. What have you thought? Umeonaje? I want to open this to a question, to a comment. Hey, a comment about this experience. About what we've shared, really. Yeah. Do you have thoughts? Thoughts? Yes. Wonderful.
I do have a question for you guys. First of all, I really enjoyed the session. So my question is, now that you guys have told us much about Turkana, I've never been there, but you did a great job. So while listening to Ngartia, he was talking about him taking a selfie by the river, and he's like, he feels it's something stupid. Okay. So my question is, what do you guys feel Turkana would say about us as humanity, where we are headed? Do you guys feel like we're doing a good job, or is is there something we need to be doing better? Yeah, that's my question for you guys.
I'm gonna make him 2 or 3.
Thank you. Asanteni sana for, letting us see Turkana through your eyes. I think for me, what comes out interesting is, as an artist, I found myself in places where I'm performing to an audience of experts, right? People whose main job is really like statistics and all that legal, a lot of jargons and I always feel the contribution for me is to humanize the conversation or personalize the conversation, right? In this case, it's kind of like, animalize it, like naturize it. I don't know what the right word is, but essentially, because I feel like knowledge has been eliticized, and not not like across the board. Like there's certain aspects of knowledge that have been eliticized, and then there's other aspects that have been downplayed. It's like, I don't know where art and science kind of took a convergence where like art went this way and science went this way, because I feel like a lot of the knowledge really is like art has done so much in terms of keeping knowledge alive, right? And keeping a lot of this alive than even science has, right? And it's so beautiful to see like that revisiting, because that's what I can call it now. And so I was wondering, even as a country, right, what we've done, because a huge part of what we call Kenya right now is Maasai territory. It belongs to the Ma community, like it used to be. That's a lot of the names that a lot of towns, even Nairobi is as a Maasai word. And even what we sell as magical Kenya, like is Maasai culture, right? So it's how we've appropriated the culture itself to sell this idea of a country that we didn't create ourselves, like it was imposed on us. And I think that's why such conversations and such initiatives are important, because we get to question that, we get to interrogate that idea, we get to debunk what it means even to be, even our own perspective of what animals are. Because, look at Nairobi right now, right? All this gentrification is pretty much getting rid of everything. If people like Wangari Maathai didn't put their foot on the ground, we wouldn't have Karura right now, even though they're still trying to grab it. There's Nairobi National Park here, which we don't know when they're going to think is more prime property than, right? And so it's a really interesting like conversation to be in, and I'm very happy of what you guys have done, like just giving us a glimpse of that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Fwande. My question may be a little heavy, but I'm thinking that you've been in Turkana and just come back to Nairobi. And the biggest theme today being disrupting the nature narrative. Right now in Nairobi, or in Kenya generally, we are facing a bigger problem of femicide, and how people approach the way, let me put it in words of Adelaide, the way we've blackened our being so that we assume or presume that there's a certain way people should be dressed to be respected. There's a certain way women should present themselves to be respected. And then that's how we've called it nature. That's how we've somehow internalized that, okay, she wasn't covered enough, she wasn't respectful enough. And you've taken time away from the big cities, you've seen the environment, the people dressing. I'm not sure if you got to enjoy night dances. A huge part of my life, I grew up in West Pokot County, where we could go to the river and women are just having beads on the waist and nothing on top, and no one is raping them, no one is killing them. What inspiration or what thing have you come up to write about in this time that we're experiencing this? Thank you.
I'm just going to allow, thank you so much. Maybe one or two, not everyone has to address every question. Is that okay?
In response to the question about what does Turkana think about our present moment as humans, I really don't think Turkana gives a fuck. Like, Turkana's been there for hundreds of millions of years. This is the thing we've been trying to get our head around with like deep time stuff, is like it's witnessed many, many extinction events. And this is just going to be like another thing. Humans have been here for such a short time, and they're just going to be like this one failed species that didn't last very long. I don't know if that's helpful or not helpful for people to hear, but that is what the land of Turkana is going to think.
I don't think anything drives that home more than learning that we had cousins who might number up to like 15. I mean, that's debated, but I feel like 844 history made us feel like there was this linear way of evolution. It's like Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and it's like they were waiting for each other to have their spotlight and then exit the stage. And at some point we were living with our cousins, and you look at all the dogs and you're like, of course, like almost every other animal has cousins, but then there's us. And all the drama around it about whether we massacred all our siblings, and all that. Anyway, I'll latch onto two questions. That one, I think my answer was, she mentioned the massacre last week and what we've been witnessing as Kenyans for the past 1 year. And so one of the questions that came up after we saw, the forces from the massacre side was, really, how much have we changed? I think Sam got a book about its moral philosophy of evolution. 10,000 years ago, they were doing the same shit we're doing today, we just have fancier tools. And on the femicide point, I think it was a very... The pregnant lady who was found fossilized with a fetus still, I think she was the only person in that entire array that the guide thought important to mention that her hands were tied back, right? And you're like, so, anyway, how much have we really changed? And since making tools is an important part of our identity as Homo, I've discovered, Homo whatever we ended up as, were the stone tools as controversial as AI is? It's like what they're traditionalists who are like, no, we can't break nuts, guys. It's against the order of nature, right? It's gonna take away all the skilled workers and artists. Yes. So what would they think of ChatGPT, for example, at the moment? And on the other question, I'll answer with questions, I guess. How separate from nature are we really? Like when we talk about we're going into nature, are we not part of nature? Like what's this thing we have about separating ourselves from nature, right? Because if we think of ourselves as part of nature, then cities kind of become like humongous anthills, don't they? This is just how we build. Yeah.
I think to answer your question, or to continue the conversation that you've started, I feel like scientific problems are poetic problems. I feel like the same question a poet might have is the same one a scientist might have. And I mean, it goes back to the first thing I said about how we arrive at that knowledge. So I agree with you that there shouldn't be a distinction between what art is and what science is, because it's just how we make sense of the world. And I wish there were kind of structures that enabled that mode of thinking in universities amongst us, I don't believe there should be that big a distinction. And to Fwande's question, there was a line I wrote, and I think it thinks along with what you mentioned about culture. And the line is, let me just open that quickly. Who created his own terms for belonging? And I think that's something that we desperately are in need of, to not be told how to be, who to be in whichever aspect it is of our identities. And it's something that especially women in this country have to consistently fight for. And it's interesting that we can learn that from looking back, you know. Yeah, so thank you so much for your questions.
Yeah, really great questions. I don't think I'm gonna do much justice to responding to them, but definitely something that I was thinking about in relation to the conversation you started about femicide, and how you mentioned about how there's this implication that it's natural in some way, and that's all tied up with victim blaming. And I think, sorry, I'm trying to articulate myself properly, but somewhere down the line, nature has been presented in the hierarchical structures that we live in. And when you spend time deeply with nature, I mean, I'm saying this with inverted commas because I agree with Ngartia that as much as the separation between art and science should be broken down, also between ourselves and nature. But when you spend deeper time with that, you see that it's not true. It's not true for nature. And, we were having a conversation yesterday about queerness in the animal kingdom because of the quote that you picked out for Sam to read, which is all about it's like British colonial kind of imposed in Kenya ideas around following the natural order in relationships. But if you look at the animal kingdom, I would be amazed if you could find an animal that wasn't a bit gay. Like, honestly, if you start to look into it, they're all at it. And so then the unnatural thing is to be totally heterosexual, right? But then the idea that we've got, or that's been put on us, is that it's unnatural to be queer. So these are some of the things when we're talking about science as well. We had a lot of discussions about the lens that science comes in. You've got these scientists that are telling you this is the conclusion, but they're not saying what their experiences of the world have been that also informed how they came to that conclusion. That's part of the evidence that they've drawn in, as much as the things that they find in the ground, or the things that they look at in the strata of rock. They're bringing evidence of their own life and experience and perspectives, and that's shifting how we see nature too. So I guess disrupting those narratives feels important.
Quick question, so you have to be like super articulate. And okay, here's one.
Yeah, so I have a quick question. So what did you bring back from Turkana, and what does it mean to you? It can be something physical or abstract.
Last one. Make it count if, okay.
So my question is, how do you disrupt the narrative when you're, for instance, in the same environment? Because you don't get to go to Turkana every day. As a poet myself, it takes a lot to push me to the point where my pen goes to paper. And I think in Turkana, it would have been so easy to do that. But what if I can't travel around for whatever reason? For example, as a young Black woman right now, it's so difficult to, for instance, convince a consular officer that I just want to go to your country to see the Great Barrier Reef, They would never buy that. So how do you find new ways to see nature when you're in the same environment every day?
Okay, the shouter amongst you can start shouting. Who wants to take any?
In terms, for the second question, I mean, obviously everyone's process is different, and I really echo the feelings of life being a barrier to art a lot of the time, just the responsibilities and the mundaneness in some ways. But I suppose I just wanted to pick up on this thing that Ngartia said about humans being part of nature, and part of that is also that nature is in our lives everywhere all the time. One of the things that I wrote about in Turkana was about basically a mini egg was in the bottom of my bag. I hadn't realized, and then a few days in, my bag was full of ants. And these are the things that happen at home too, right? Like, there's fruit flies buzzing around you or whatever. And actually all of these creatures have a million poems you could write about them too. So I guess it's about, one of the things that I think is great about poetry is it really teaches, it's like a skill in noticing. It's a skill in tuning into detail and then thinking expansively about that. So I suppose that's one way. I don't know if that goes to answer, but that's one way.
Yeah, just to go off of that, to piggyback on her point, staying open really helps whenever I feel, you could look into your friend's eyes and, you know, imagine something from it. I feel like maybe this is a very poet thing to say, but there are poems everywhere. There's this tweet that went viral a couple of maybe years, months, I don't know. You know, there are cathedrals everywhere for those with eyes to see. And, you know, I feel like that really changed something in my mind about how to approach the idea of inspiration, even when it feels like sometimes, you know, it counts for a lot to actually be embedded in certain places, as we were in Turkana. But in the absence of that, I feel it's everywhere. And when you open yourself to that, then you're like, wow, I've literally been inside the poem the whole time. The other question, I wrote it down and I had something to say. Yes, what did we bring back? I brought back with me new friends. But I also brought back a few little rocks for my partner. I don't know if he's here. He was at the back. No fossils, though. No fossils, just little rocks we saw around. And yeah, it's always nice to have like a little memento of where we were.
Yeah, just to build on what you said about coming back with friends, I feel like that's what's going to really, really stick with me, is the conversations that we've been having. And I think this maybe links back to the earlier question about like what it means to be in Kenya. Like, and I just wanted to say, like, I experienced such a generosity from everyone around me, and kind of like it really challenged like so many things that, like, we've all been taught certain things when we've like been to school, and we just had so many of these conversations were not about what happened in Turkana 2 million years ago. They were about what is happening in Kenya now, what is happening in the UK now, what is happening in India now. And I think that's what's been really special about this, is that rather than try and like segregate and go into our separate camps and like and kind of reinforce this difference that people keep saying there is, it's really like been so, everyone's just been so willing to communicate honestly and openly, and that's like the main thing I think I've come back with. On the, what was the other question? Oh, yeah, I wanted to echo about saying that like you don't have to go to Turkana to write about nature, but also I think where you probably, you know, anyone can be in Nairobi and see like a marabou stork or a black kite. Like, I only discovered this today, and I guess because I'm seeing it with fresh eyes, I'm like, wow, this is in the city. But I think what's important is to try and find like what it is that your perspective brings, like your personal perspective. And like, I think that's probably where we didn't all start out as poets like writing about amazing places like Turkana. We just started with what was important to us, and if you just cling on to what you have to say is so important, basically, and only you can say it. So just trust in that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Everything they said, I'm going to start with the first question. This was a very transcendental experience to me. I think I've brought back lots of answers, both, I'd say, scientific and spiritual. And of course, I have rocks in my suitcase. It's like lots of pebbles, friends. I really wish I'd have like carried one of those 10,000-year-old fragments of pottery, but that felt like a very arrogant thing to just like. So I didn't. But I have pictures, so I might have I might frame them. Notes, and a new obsession or special interest. Because this trip has kind of given life to the dry notes and memories I have from double history lessons in Form 2. You guys remember Evolving World? Like, my age is showing, but yeah. And of course, Turkana contacts, because I'm definitely going back, and it looks like a place you could get lost in, and I'd be like, I need to be able to call Francis or John Ekusi. And Musa, who works in the kitchen, is a very important person to know if you're ever in TBI. And of course, Chief Sarah, if you get in trouble, as I often tend to. And the second question, I understand, though, especially with our systems, I think that the Railways Museum is especially notorious for their snobbish attitude to people. Oh, we are live. Okay, which one is the close-up? The Railways Museum. If you're watching this, I hope you've changed your attitude. But It doesn't make sense. Like when in a city that literally grew from a railway station and a country that was created for a railway, which is insane because lots of countries create railways. But then also lots of countries have mafias, as Boni keeps reminding us, and our country, it's a mafia that has a country. Anyway, I find it extremely frustrating when you go to like museums. So like the national museums at the head office are really cool. Like, but you go to these other things. I shall go again to the Railways Museum because there has been quite a few experiences. And it's like you can't take pictures sometimes. Like sometimes you can't access stuff. And it's not like you're trying to carry stuff home, right? Even libraries where you can carry stuff home are friendlier. But if we can't travel for one reason or the other, I'm sorry, but we have to bring our power of imagination to this, right? So like at the site at Lothergam, I think at some point the professor was tired of us. He's like, yeah, but how did the environment look like though? Nice bones, but were there like trees and stuff? And stuff came out of that. Like when we're being told about a plant that grew there that had red berries, and there's an inside joke that I don't really get about how now one of the fossils must have had red teeth. Archaeologists found it funny, I floated. But we do have to bring a lot of our power of imagination into this. And I know it's a very difficult ask because that's the space I work in almost on a daily basis. You're like fragments of evidence, and then you have to make leaps of imagination while still within the gaps or whatever. I'm finishing, I promise. Mine is just a comment. Oh yeah, and actually dropping, if we're not on different sides, you know, STEM and the arts or whatever, can we just, like, let's drop the boundaries. Starting with academic journal sites, Bona, just lower the prices, We'll pay, but lower the goddamn prices. We want to read all the masters this is and wonderful PhD this is, even when we don't understand half the things that are being said because of technical language. But I think it's important for us to engage with them the same way we expect them to read our poetry and come to our shows and all that stuff. Because then we can find the things that interest us that might not be as important, like the drama was mentioning, to the scientific side. Does that answer you? I hope it does.
Shukran sana mabibi na mabwana. Wakati huu ndio wakati waku, how do you say land in Kiswahili? Like we have reached, we are at the end. Tamati. Tumefika, we are here, we have arrived. It's now, thank you so much for being with us. I hope that this has been a useful kind of show and tell of our evolving idea of what we experience and the work that we are making as a result of that. A bridge into kind of what has already been a bridge between Scotland, Kenya, and India, and deep time itself. So thank you for coming. Oh, we've got a very important.
I don't know about very important, but as I listened to this wonderful emotional rendition of a place I know quite well, as a person who works for TBI, I wondered if any of you were asking, why did a research institute collaborate with poets? What possessed us? Apart from one person sitting over there who rang me a lot. And I think it's very important that you all know the truth of why we did it. And I see the young man who asked a question like this has actually left. But we actually at Turkana Basin Institute don't really see the division between art, poetry, and science. It's all a language or a view or an observation. Scientists observe in one way, poets in another. I know that all my colleagues at TBI, including Ekuzi, who smokes way too much for his health, and Francis Ekai, who has way too many children that we can't educate well. Those are fabulous, fabulous people. Every single one of the people that you mentioned, Musa, our kitchen staff, our drivers, our preparators, our horticultural people, the people who water the trees, the people who do the hospitality sides of it, the people who do our security sides. Every single one of those people is committed to the poetry of Turkana. They might not express it every day, but they are. They're committed to the bodily experience of Turkana, of the heat, of the vision, of the imagery, of everyday life in a place like Turkana. And from Turkana Basin Institute's perspective, our next great adventure is art, visual art, and science. So towards the end of the year, we'll have a very big, another experience with people who want to come to actually see if we can represent TBI in art. Next time I challenge you to go to Illoret. More remote, more isolated, more challenging, and in Illoret, you can see the pathway to God, because we have an astronomy program and we're linking the pathway of the Milky Way to the origins of mankind. And this is not my view. This pathway was the words that were given to me, were the words given to me by the Dasanach people themselves. This is where TBI is rooted. Thank you very much for making me stir about my work and about Turkana. And thank you all for being here to listen to these amazing poems about the place that we all should go and visit one day. Okay? Maybe we can talk Anya into doing this again. So welcome everybody, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I see why we wanted her to speak, because this is CJ Jones. She's the COO of the Turkana Basin Institute, and we're super privileged to have you join us today. And thank you for those beautiful words at the end. I think that was a very fitting way to close this evening. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your interest, your curiosity, and your spirit. The energy has been wonderful. I just want to say thank you to the poets. Thank you for bringing such wonderful energy with you. Can I say the thanks to, are you adding thanks? Oh my goodness. Thank you. I don't know if you also know this, but Dino Martins, who is the CEO of the Turkana Basin Institute, last year at the Macondo Festival, had a conversation with Shubangi. Gosh, I've forgotten her last name. Shwarup, who wrote an amazing novel called Latitudes of Longing. If you haven't read it, you should check it out. And she came with us also now. So not only is this kind of inspired by that conversation in a sense, but also we had the privilege of being with her in Turkana. Please just wave to the people, wave to the people. Oh, hey, as I was closing. Hi, Oyamo Richard. We're going to have to take you aside because I really have to close now at 6 o'clock. But he asked, and I will tell you just now the question, how impactful the experience has been for them artistically. Is there a shift or reinforcement in some element of their poetry? So we'll take you aside. We'll take you aside to have that question, or take the poets aside to feedback there. So I was saying thank you. Thank you to Anya. Thank you to Sam. Thank you to Scottish Poetry Library. Thank you to Devika and Sana and Cheche Bookshop. We really appreciate the space. Thank you. We'll pray God for these pillars to become invisible, so we can have a closer experience with people. Thank you. Thank you again. And good night.
Goni nyang bore de ye eya imoroto na gado to mani wi ya na gado to mana wi ya gavirim India lo mojido eya di yetene za gedelo kagoro eya di yetene India lo dorang eya di yetene za gedelo kagoro